Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie. In this video, I want to look at the week starting on Monday, March the 11th, 2024. And this is a week that runs through until Sunday, March the 17th, 2024. I also want to consider heliocentric astrology. I've mentioned heliocentric astrology before, but in this video I want to look at some examples of heliocentric astrology in action. This is the astrology where you center things from a perspective of the sun. Remember, the sun is at the center of the solar system, obviously, but astrologers tend to regard the Earth as being the center of the solar system. A very medieval view, but I suppose we are looking at things from a perspective of the Earth. We are on the Earth, so it seems logical to look at things from the Earth's perspective. But I do believe that heliocentric astrology has a role to play. Heliocentric astrology is used by astrologers who are interested in stock market movements, for example, who are interested in mundane astrology, the astrology of world events. And it is less personal, because when you have a heliocentric chart, there is no ascendant. There isn't even a moon. So there isn't even a sun, actually. The reason being is because the sun is at the center of the solar system. So there's nothing to be seen. Instead of having a sun, there is the Earth. And because from the sun's perspective, the moon is pretty much in the same place as the sun, there's no point in having the moon. And that's what you have with a heliocentric chart. Also, because it's a sun-based chart, planets don't go retrograde. They always go round in the same direction. And Mercury and Venus are free. In other words, there's no planet that Mercury and Venus are hugging, because in a geocentric chart, the Mercury and Venus are always close to the sun. That's not an issue in a heliocentric chart. And so you've got, Mercury actually is very fast from a heliocentric perspective. It goes around the sun in 88 days. And I think Venus goes around the sun in something like 225 days. They're very fast movers, Mercury and Venus. But I do think it's important to consider heliocentric astrology, even if we have no plans on using it. We should just know about it. And heliocentric ephemerides are available on astro.com. In my yesterday's video, I had a link to the page on astro.com where you can download PDFs of the heliocentric ephemerides. So yes, I will be looking at a number of events. I'll be looking at Chernobyl. I'll be looking at what else? Some stock market crashes. I'll look at the 1929 stock market crash, the 1987 stock market crash. I'll also look at, the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand, 1914. Just a few events to get an idea about the way heliocentric astrology is working, or maybe is not working. I'm not saying that it is always effective. I'm not even saying you need to use it. I just think you need to know about it. That's all. But I think I should just start off by giving you a broad structure of this video. So I'm going to begin this video with a blow-by-blow account of what is happening astrologically. So, for example, the week kicks off on Monday with Venus moving into Pisces, and then I'm going to go through Monday through to Sunday, looking at the main astrological events as I see them. I am then going to turn my attention to heliocentric astrology, and I'm going to give some examples of heliocentric astrology. Now, normally I look at some famous people, but I don't want to look at famous people today. I just couldn't find anyone that really interested me. So instead, I'm going to look at heliocentric astrology. And having looked at some charts from the past, I'm going to look at the heliocentric chart for this week, because from a heliocentric perspective, there are some important things happening this week that I believe I need to mention. And having done that, I'm going to finish with the I Ching. And my I Ching reading, as usual, is going to be divided up into 4 sections. This is going to be a general I Ching reading. Then I'm going to look at money, then business, and finally I'm going to look at relationships. So let me start by looking at the astrology for this week, the geocentric astrology. Now, this is the chart for the beginning of the week, when the week started, March the 11th, New York, midnight. And I suppose the first thing you notice is that Venus is right at the end of Aquarius. Venus is about to go into Pisces, and on Monday the 11th, Venus indeed moves into Pisces. And that's quite an important change. So Venus had been in Aquarius, perhaps quite detached, a little bit aloof. Venus in Aquarius, an air sign, wanting to relate to people in a maybe fairly cognitive rather than emotional way. Then Venus moves into Pisces, and that's a big change. Venus is exalted in Pisces. That means it works well in Pisces. It's a very emotional placement for Venus. It's a very sensitive placement. It's in general is good for relationships. It's also good for the significators of Venus, in particular anything to do with fashion, beauty, decoration, things that look nice. Maybe our aesthetic judgment is going to be on good form with Venus and Pisces. Also, in general, our sensitivity is going to be finely tuned. And if we make the effort, we can behave in a way that is harmonious and it doesn't rock the boat. Now, also on Monday, aside from Venus going into Pisces, we see a decile between Mars and Neptune. You can see that Mars and Neptune are approximately 36 degrees apart. 36 degrees, 1/10 of a circle. This decile is about an attempt to create a certain style. Mars, Neptune, you put them together. You might see that as making a special effort to be a bit unusual, a bit otherworldly, trying to put one's effort into things which may be spiritual. Of course, you could see Mars from a fashion point of view. I don't know, Mars quintile, Mars decile Neptune as, I don't know, heroin chic. That's one approach. I suppose if you associate Neptune with drugs, Mars is what you're trying to put your energy into that. But that should be just be about style. I hope that's nothing to do with actual lifestyle or behavior. Because, some people might think they have to make a special effort to be degenerate or debauched or, to show that they drink or worse. And perhaps having this rather affected attraction to criminality. I'm not saying that's your problem, but it's possible that you might observe people, I don't know, trying to be gangsters. Trying to be gangsters in, as I said, in a very affected way. Moving on to Tuesday, and in fact Tuesday we have a semisquare between Mercury and Uranus. So Mercury is, there's Uranus, there is Mercury, will be at around 4 degrees Aries. In fact, I can give you the chart of the semisquare, the exact semisquare. That's on Tuesday. There's Mercury for Aries, and it's exactly semisquare Uranus. Now, that semisquare Uranus on Tuesday can be about hasty communications, saying things without really thinking it through, being impulsive, especially in terms of what we say. The words just come out and then we have to deal with the consequences. But on a positive note, Mercury semisquare Uranus can be about having quite inspired thoughts. Things may suddenly occur to us and they may be quite amazing, or we may think they're amazing. But whatever occurs to us, we'll perhaps feel that we have to take immediate action. Then 2 days later, Mercury moves on and makes a semisquare to Mars. So there's Mercury, moved on to 836 Aries, making a semisquare to Mars. So Mercury-Mars semisquare can be about the way we communicate, and our style of communication could be a bit angry. We're going to be really frantic to get our point of view across. In the process, we might upset people. We might be rude, without meaning to. Just happens. So we do have to be careful what we say in midweek. And these two aspects between Mercury semisquare Uranus on the 12th and Mercury semisquare Mars on the Thursday the 14th, they're kind of linked. In general, Mercury is going to be on the midpoint of Mercury and Mars. So I'm thinking this whole period from Tuesday through to Thursday, we're going to be agitated. We're going to be impatient, and this impatience is going to get noticed. And in the process of being impatient, we might put everyone on edge. And of course, it might work in terms of how we respond to other people being on edge. So I think all of us are going to be on edge in midweek. And Mercury may bring together this Mars-Uranus square, which is still active. Throughout the week, you can see that Uranus is at 20 Taurus. Mars is separating at 23 Aquarius, but still, it's still there, and Mercury brings it together from Tuesday through to Thursday. And so a lot of what I'd said in a previous video about Mars square Uranus probably still applies. Mars-Uranus can be dangerous. We shouldn't act on impulse. We should really consider how we occur to other people. We might come over too strongly, we might come over too abruptly, and it's a time that some people might want to be, revolutionaries, but maybe not in a very constructive way. So I think we do have to be a bit careful with that. And we have to be very careful what we say, because there is scope for causing a great deal of disruption. Then, at the end of the week, the Sun makes a conjunction to Neptune. Now, Sun conjunct Neptune, it happens every year. It's, in a way, is not a big deal. But this Sun conjunct Neptune, it's in Pisces. It's reasonably close to the fixed star Skeet. Skeet is connected with shipwrecks and disasters. It's not dead on Skeet. It's probably a degree or two off, or something like that. So this Sun conjunct Neptune may represent a bit of delusion. We think we know the answers. We tend to believe what people say. Maybe people tend to believe what we say, but is that a good idea? Probably not. We might think we know the answers, but do we really know the answers? Do we know anything? So that is the negative side of Sun conjunct Neptune. The positive side, Sun conjunct Neptune, can be very spiritual. We can be focusing on something larger than ourselves. I mean, the Sun is where we express ourselves. We express our individuality. And so Sun conjunct Neptune, we want to express ourselves almost by losing ourselves, by becoming part of something larger than ourselves. And, whether that's God, some religious organization, maybe a political organization, or getting wound up with some cause. Just anything that can take us beyond the bounds of our own individuality. And that sounds very nice, but, our individuality exists for a purpose. We are individuals. We need to respect our own individualities. So don't be too keen to sign up to the first good cause that comes your way, because it might turn out to be a bad cause. And be very careful about political and religious fanaticism. It's easy to get caught up with Sun conjunct Neptune, but we might find ourselves chasing a fantasy. And so that is something that we really have to be aware of. Now, what I want to do is look at what's going on heliocentrically, like right now, because I think some important stuff is going on heliocentrically. But before I do that, I want to consider some events from a heliocentric perspective. So let me start with Chernobyl. So here is the chart of Chernobyl from a heliocentric perspective. This is when April 26, 1986, you had a nuclear power station in Ukraine basically had a meltdown. I think they were trying to do some practice on some safety mechanism and deliberately turning off turning off a safety mechanism, and as a result it led to this catastrophic nuclear disaster. Although in some respects it's been quite good for the wildlife. I was just reading about wolves in around Chernobyl. They're doing well. They're not being hunted by humans in the exclusion zone, and they're actually showing some resistance to cancer because of genetic mutation. So from a wildlife perspective, Chernobyl wasn't necessarily such a bad thing. But from a human perspective, obviously it was a catastrophe. Now, you can see in this chart that there is Earth conjunct Pluto. There is no Sun in a heliocentric chart because the Sun is in the middle of the chart. This is from a perspective of the Sun. So you will see that there is no Sun, there is no Moon, there is the Earth. Now, okay, you could put the Moon in, but the Moon would be in exactly the same place as the Earth from the Sun's perspective. And I just want to show you the geocentric chart for Chernobyl. So that's the geocentric chart for Chernobyl. So when Chernobyl happened, there was a Sun-Pluto opposition. And an opposition between the Sun and Pluto from a heliocentric point of view becomes a conjunction by definition. Now, some of the planets will be in fairly similar places from geocentric, heliocentric. You're going to see Saturn, Uranus, the outer planets. from Jupiter, even from Mars onwards, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, will always be in roughly the same position between a geocentric and a heliocentric chart. But as you go inwards, they start to differ. So you look at Mars. Mars is at 13 Capricorn in the geocentric chart, but when we go to the heliocentric chart, Mars 13 Capricorn geocentric, you can see heliocentric is in fact in 5 Sagittarius. So the planets are not in quite the same position. And as for Mercury and Venus, they can be anywhere, because these are fast-moving planets. Mercury goes all the way through all the signs in 88 days. Now, what is exceptional about this chart is, firstly, what we already know, because the Sun opposition Pluto in the geocentric chart has become a conjunction in the heliocentric chart for Chernobyl. There's that Earth-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio. Remember, Sun was in Taurus, so in a heliocentric chart it just goes to the opposite sign, so it's now in Scorpio on April the 26th, Earth in Scorpio. So you've got an Earth-Pluto conjunction in Scorpio. Now, look at this number 5, how 5 keeps cropping up in this chart. You've got Jupiter at 5 Pisces, Earth at 5 Scorpio, Pluto at 5 Scorpio, Mars at 5 Sagittarius, Mars at 5, Venus at 5 Sagittarius, Saturn at 5 Sagittarius, Neptune at 4 Capricorn. So a lot of stuff at 5, and this is indicating some of the aspects that were exact at the time of Chernobyl. So we had a trine between Jupiter and the Earth-Pluto conjunction, an exact trine. Jupiter can be about release. So where were these heliocentric energies going to manifest? Where was the point of least that point of least resistance? Well, at that time it was in a nuclear power station in Ukraine. Of course, then it was part of the Soviet Union. That's where the accident happened. That's where the issue happened. It's like when you've got the chart of disaster, that perhaps that disaster could have happened in many different parts of the world, but it went for the weakest link, and right then the weakest link was in that nuclear power station. And so Earth-Pluto trine Jupiter. Jupiter was the release. Jupiter allowed this thing to happen. It was easy for this accident to happen. Also, Mars-Saturn conjunction. Mars conjunct Saturn. Mars and Saturn are the death pair. So from a heliocentric perspective, we have Mars-Saturn exactly square Jupiter. It was easy for this destructive thing to be unleashed. So the Chernobyl heliocentric chart is one of the best examples of heliocentric astrology in action. I'm afraid it doesn't always look as good as this. I mean, I say good as this. Obviously, Chernobyl was a disaster. But this chart really does tell us what was going on April the 26th, 1986. Another chart that we might want to look at is the chart of Hiroshima. Now, I'm not convinced that we really have to look at a heliocentric chart for Hiroshima, because, as far as I'm concerned, the geocentric chart of Hiroshima is in some respects perfect. It's my favourite chart. I love this Hiroshima chart. It's the most important chart there is, as far as I'm concerned, because it so graphically shows what happened on August the 6th, 1945. It was an atomic bomb. It came from the air. It was a uranium-based atomic bomb. It was the only time that I believe that uranium bombs are not really practical. They tend to be plutonium bombs based on implosion of a preferred choice for atomic bomb manufacturer. So this was kind of a bit unique that they decided to use a uranium bomb. And Uranus is a ruler of uranium, and uranium at the time when that bomb was released was exactly on the midheaven. It just describes it so wonderfully well, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm sure that people dropping the atomic bomb didn't really know, weren't using astrology to select that event. So you might expect heliocentric astrology to have described what was going on. And so if we look at the heliocentric chart for Hiroshima, it's really not quite so spectacular. We do see a trine between the Earth and Jupiter. The Earth and Uranus. Uranus, the planet of the atomic bomb, of a uranium-based atomic bomb, and it impacts the Earth. That's what happened. It was, in many respects, the beginning of the nuclear age. I understand that there had already been the first atomic test in Alamogordo a few weeks earlier, but still, this was the first time that an atomic bomb had been used against people as an act of anger. And yes, the Earth was trine Jupiter, but in this case, the geocentric chart seems to work a lot better. And I'm doing this because I don't want to tell you, oh, heliocentric astrology is wonderful, you should always use it. I'm actually saying that in many ways it's actually quite hit and miss, and I think in most cases we don't actually have to worry too much about heliocentric astrology. But I do feel in this video I need to look at it, just to give you a flavour for what's going on with heliocentric astrology. Another event was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. This was the event that started the First World War. Now, at the time of the assassination, from a geocentric point of view, there was a Sun-Pluto conjunction. In Cancer. But if you have a Sun-Pluto conjunction in Cancer, by definition, that becomes an Earth-Pluto opposition, with the Earth being in Capricorn. So that's our Sun-Jupiter conjunction from a heliocentric perspective, becoming an Earth-Pluto opposition. Let me just show you this chart from a geocentric perspective. So there's a geocentric perspective. You can see there's our Sun-Pluto conjunction in a geocentric chart, our regular chart with our Placidus house cusps. So let's now go back to the heliocentric chart, and there's our Earth-Pluto opposition. And then we look at Venus and Mars. There was a conjunction between Venus and Mars at the time of the assassination, a heliocentric conjunction. And that conjunction between Venus and Mars was square Pluto and was square the Earth. Now, we would not have been able to see that from a geocentric perspective. So that heliocentric T-square seemed to really sort of sum up the assassination. Earth-Pluto opposition with the Venus-Mars with a Venus-Mars square. That's why when with heliocentric astrology, you should follow what's going on. Just follow the stars follow the planets as they make their geocentric aspects, because you might pick up something useful. And I'm going to try in these videos in future to just keep track of the heliocentric movements of the planets. So I think that the assassination of Grand Duke Ferdinand, particularly having that Mars square Pluto, Mars square Earth, that transformative act of violence hitting the Earth. I think that does work. I think that's quite an effective demonstration of heliocentric astrology. Another event, which is perhaps not flagged so well with heliocentric astrology, is the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's not such a big deal. It's February the 24th, 2022. It's not quite so dramatic, but you see a couple of things. Jupiter is closely sextile Uranus. So I should make it clear, when you were looking at these heliocentric aspects, really, in my experience of it, we should forget any concepts of good and bad aspects. You might say, "Oh, Jupiter, it's a good aspect. Jupiter sextile Uranus." It doesn't matter. It's just an aspect. They're connected. You look at two planets with the same numbers: 14 Jupiter, 14 Pisces, Uranus, 14 Taurus. That's an exact aspect. You can see it by eye. Jupiter is about advancement, moving forward. This is what we want to do. Uranus is about the drama, and so hence the Jupiter Uranus sextile. Earth is square Mercury, so I suppose the Earth is galvanized. Now this square between Earth and Mercury happens a lot. Actually happens, every 44 days. It's not in its sense a big deal, but we're just looking at it post hoc. We're just looking at it after the event with complete hindsight. So Earth square Mercury might be the news goes around. But there is a midpoint that's worth considering. The Earth is on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So you can see that Mars is there, Saturn is there. So the Mars-Saturn midpoint is going to be at around 20 Capricorn. So the Earth is sesquiquadrate the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So Mars-Saturn is a death pair. So Earth on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, from a heliocentric perspective, does maybe suggest an event where a lot of people are going to get killed, which is, of course, what has happened. So, I'm not saying that the heliocentric chart for Russia's invasion of Ukraine is particularly spectacular, but I just thought I would show it to you. Then we've got some stock market events. So this is the chart for the Wall Street crash on October the 29th, 1929. I don't know precisely what time on October the 29th, 1929, the crash actually happened. But you can see a grand trine here. So there's the Earth at 5 Taurus, trine Saturn, trine the Venus-Neptune conjunction. So when you've got a grand trine, particularly in a heliocentric chart, don't just say, "Oh, it's a good aspect." No, not at all. It's just an aspect that is there. It happens to be there, with the Earth linking with Saturn, linking with Neptune, with Venus thrown in. So if you've got a grand trine, you've got things moving quickly. Things can happen quickly. Earth trine Neptune, Earth trine Venus, people's hopes, people's fears, people's fantasies, and you throw Saturn in. And that might help to explain how this crash actually happened from a heliocentric perspective. Notice also that, like with the invasion of going back to the Russia-Ukraine invasion. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there was a Jupiter sextile Uranus. Again, that might have been sudden action, a kind of a release, all this tension. People kind of knew that Russia was going to invade, but in this case, that Jupiter-Uranus, it happens. And likewise with Wall Street, the Wall Street crash in 1929, there was a Jupiter sextile Uranus. So we had Jupiter sextile Uranus coming up again. So do follow the Jupiter sextile Uranus cycle. And again, we've got another sextile, a further example, but from a heliocentric perspective, sextiles are not necessarily good aspects. Another big crash happened in 1987. I mean, I remember that weekend. There was a big storm on that weekend. It was a weekend on a Saturday. I remember I got my diploma in astrology from the Faculty of Astrological Studies. I think that was the 17th, was it? 17th of October 1987. I think Liz Green gave a speech, and I think she was the one giving out the diplomas. And there was a storm that weekend in England. And then on the Monday, often called Black Monday, October the 19th, was when the crash happened. The stock market, I think, fell something like 20%. And so here is the crash from a heliocentric perspective. And you can see that there is an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. So that means that there was, from a geocentric perspective, a Sun-Jupiter opposition. But a Sun-Jupiter opposition from a heliocentric perspective becomes an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. Let me just demonstrate this to really make this absolutely clear. That's a chart, the Black Monday, October 19th, 1987. There you see Sun-Jupiter opposition from a geocentric perspective. So when we make that a heliocentric chart, we get this Earth-Jupiter. We get an Earth-Jupiter conjunction, and that Earth-Jupiter conjunction is the trigger. It just releases everything. It's like the pin that pops the bubble. So always check what's going on at the time every year when you have a Sun opposition Jupiter, because that's the same as an Earth-Jupiter conjunction. Again, we see a Jupiter-Uranus trine. So Jupiter-Uranus trines, from a heliocentric perspective, may actually be quite dangerous. I know that Ebertin, in his book Combination of Stellar Influences, he talks about the thank the Lord aspect. I don't think anyone was thanking the Lord on Black Monday, unless someone had betted heavily on the stock market falling. Some people did. Some people made a fortune on Black Monday. Nazim Taleb, I think the author of the Black Swan book, I think he betted using options on that there'd be a market fall. I think he made a lot of money on that. But for most investors, there was nothing thank the Lord about it, about Black Monday. It was a real disaster, or at least it felt like it at the time. And yes, we had a Jupiter-Uranus trine. Uranus was trine the Earth. Jupiter was conjunct the Earth, and we see Uranus was also square Mars heliocentrically. So in fact, you had Mercury square Saturn. So you had a sort of a heliocentric T-square, Mercury opposition Mars, with Saturn on the T, Mercury on the T, Uranus on the T. So from a heliocentric perspective, I think Black Monday in 1987 was strongly flagged, and I think that is a good example of heliocentric astrology working. So let's look at something else. Okay, what about Nazi Germany? This is when Hitler came to power, January the 30th, 1933 at 11 a.m. I'm not saying that this is a particularly dramatic chart. Here's the Earth. Always look at the Earth. The Earth is the first thing to look at in a heliocentric chart, because we're down here on Earth, and we're trying to battle everything going on, in the universe, the cosmos, and that's where the focus is. And Mars and Earth is actually on the Mars-Pluto midpoint. It's on the Mars-Pluto direct midpoint. So, yeah, from a heliocentric perspective, that might be a time to be rather concerned. The Earth is actually also aspecting the Mars-Uranus midpoint. That would be about 24 Gemini. So by 25 Gemini. So by semi-square, the Earth is hitting the Mars-Uranus midpoint. So you have Earth on the Mars-Pluto and the Mars-Uranus midpoints. And I think the Earth on the Mars-Pluto midpoint, Mars-Pluto, incredible force. That's what happened when Hitler came to power. Totalitarian energy, something really dramatic and traumatic with Earth conjunct the Mars-Pluto midpoint. Also, Mercury. Look at Mercury. There's a Mercury-Pluto opposition. I suppose Mercury-Pluto opposition is about propaganda. It's about speeches. It's about someone forcing their ideas onto the populace. And you've also got Venus. Venus was making a close trine to Uranus. So I think that's quite a useful chart as far as I'm concerned. I think it does tell us something about what was going on when Hitler came to power. It doesn't tell us the whole story, and it may be that the geocentric chart actually is more useful. But as I said, it is something that we just need to consider. Now, finally, you may be thinking, what about individuals? It is quite unusual to use heliocentric astrology to look at your own, looking at your own chart with heliocentric astrology. People don't really do that very often. Because I think it seems very impersonal. Because here is a chart that doesn't have an ascendant, and it doesn't have a moon. It's just so general that it might seem pretty meaningless. But still, I thought we would look at one chart, and that's the chart of Princess Diana. And I do want to compare her chart with the chart of, the chart of her death. So here's her chart. I'm not saying that the chart is going to tell us anything particularly useful in the first instance, at least. I mean, I suppose we notice that she's got Venus opposition Venus opposition Pluto. So her heliocentric Venus is at 0 Pisces, and it's opposition Pluto. If you're into Chiron, you might be interested by the Venus-Chiron conjunction, heliocentric conjunction. I suppose a heliocentric Venus-Chiron conjunction might be about a wound regarding relationships, feeling somehow rejected. Oh, by the way, Victoria Nuland probably feels her heliocentric Venus-Chiron conjunction at the moment. Remember, she's the well, she was until quite recently the acting deputy Secretary of State. Plus, she had a more formal permanent title, which she's just given in her resignation. And of course, she may feel a bit rejected, having just retired from the State Department in the U.S. because, of course, Victoria Nuland was born on the same day as Princess Diana. But anyway, we're not talking about Victoria Nuland. We're talking about Princess Diana. And so Diana has a heliocentric Venus-Chiron conjunction opposition Pluto. So there is a drama of her relationships, and perhaps the intensity of her relationships and the pain of her relationships with that Venus-Chiron conjunction. We should perhaps also notice a semisextile between Venus and Jupiter. Now, semisextiles, normally in astrology, you don't really have to look at semisextiles. But I think in heliocentric astrology, you probably should. So Diana has this Venus semisextile Jupiter. She may feel that she is stopped from relating by Jupiter. What is Jupiter? Some force out there that she can't control. Charles maybe being a little too detached. That's certainly true. I mean, he had other things he had other things on his mind and other interests. So maybe that's Venus semisextile Jupiter, but trying to find some optimism, some way to express her Venus, but it's really sort of hard work. But then we have the question about what was going on when she was killed on October the 31st, 1987. So this is a chart for Diana's death. Notice that there's a Venus-Mars conjunction at the time of her death, and Saturn was trine that Venus-Mars conjunction. Again, showing us that trines should not be treated as favourable aspects from a heliocentric perspective. So Saturn is trine her Venus-Mars at the time, and that might indicate death. Saturn trine Mars, dying quickly, or doing something dangerous, and it all unwinding really quickly with a fatal with a fatal result, and it all just sort of comes together. Sort of Mercury conjunct the Earth. There is news that the princess, but Diana has died. So that might be one way to interpret it. But let's now bring the two charts together. Diana's we're going to put Diana in the middle, and we're going to put her death on the outside. So a kind of weird-looking chart, isn't it? Diana in the middle, and the planets on the outside. And look at Pluto. Heliocentric Pluto was at 453 Sagittarius at the time of her death. So she has her Venus at 0 Pisces, her Pluto at 7 Virgo. So heliocentric Pluto was kind of on her Venus-Pluto midpoint. And look at Mercury. Mercury was sort of close to her Venus. Venus was at 5. Transiting Mercury was at 5. Heliocentric Mercury was at 5 Pisces, close to her Venus. Linked up with Pluto, so that's all on her sort of Venus-Pluto midpoint. So potentially there is a transit there which may have had an impact. that T square in the sky involved. So you had, well, it wasn't a T square, but you had Pluto square Mercury and Pluto square the Earth. Look at Earth. The Earth was at 734 Pisces, opposition her Pluto. So, in other words, from a geocentric perspective, she had the Sun conjunct Pluto when she died. From a heliocentric perspective, that becomes Earth opposition Pluto. And Earth opposition Pluto, and Pluto was also heliocentric, transiting Pluto was square her Pluto, and then Mercury comes in to sort of bring it all together. So I think we have some evidence from a perspective of Diana's chart that maybe the heliocentric transits were pointing to some kind of unfortunate event. That is certainly possible. Now, I want to finish by considering what is happening this week, because things are happening this week from a heliocentric point of view. This is the horoscope this is a chart for Tuesday, March the 12th. And I think if we remember the Chernobyl chart and we remember the chart for Black Monday, October the 19th, 1987, we remember also the importance of the Earth. So have a look at the Earth. There is the Earth, and it is making a trine to Jupiter conjunct Uranus. Now, we know from looking at a couple of other charts that Jupiter-Uranus aspects are actually quite dangerous. Now, this Jupiter-Uranus aspect is it relatively common? Well, it's not actually relatively common. Remember, from a heliocentric perspective, Jupiter and Uranus don't go retrograde. So this is it. This is the heliocentric Jupiter-Uranus conjunction about to become exact. From a geocentric perspective, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction happens a bit later. It's not going to happen immediately. I think I mustn't lose track of Jupiter and Uranus, but yeah, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is exactly trine the Earth, and given what we know about Jupiter-Uranus, I think that's dangerous. Around Tuesday, there could be a problem event. Look out! There might be something. I don't know. Where is something going to give? Is it in Gaza? Is it in Ukraine? Is it somewhere else? Somewhere we don't know about? And at the same time as all this, there is a Venus-Mars-Pluto conjunction on March the 12th. So I think we've isolated here, March the 12th, quite a heavy day from a heliocentric perspective. And also the Earth is kind of opposition Neptune. So it's looking difficult. So I suppose what we have to ask ourselves, where is the weakest link? Where is the Earth's weakest link? Humanity's weakest link? Because this chart set for Tuesday is trying to find that weakest link. Now, of course, it may be that nothing happens, but I suppose as an astrologer, we do have to consider what might happen. We do have to consider where there is a vulnerability. And yes, I think there is a vulnerability on Tuesday, and I suppose one has to look at existing trouble spots, which could be Ukraine, could be Gaza. It'd be interesting to see what happens in the markets on Tuesday. I don't know what's going to happen on the markets on Tuesday. This channel is for entertainment purposes only. I'm not here to talk about money or give financial advice, but it will be interesting to look at the markets on Tuesday with this chart. So that gives you a feel, I hope, for heliocentric astrology. I am not saying that you need to use heliocentric astrology. If you want to use it, astro.com has ephemerides. There is software. This program has, obviously, as you can see, allows you to set up heliocentric charts. So it's not unobtainable, heliocentric astrology. And if you don't want to buy software, then yeah, astro.com has lots of PDFs with heliocentric ephemerides for sort of pretty much any year you want. I now want to look at the I Ching. Now, I would remind you that if you don't want your I Ching to be read, then it doesn't have to be read. You can stop watching a video right now. It's so important that it's voluntary. I don't want to impose any forecast on you. And indeed, my forecast for this week only applies to people who watch the I Ching segment of this video. If you don't watch that segment, then it doesn't apply to you. So let's now look at the I Ching. Remember, I'm looking at it from a general perspective first, then I'm looking at it from the perspective of money, then career and business, and finally relationships. So the first hexagram I threw was hexagram number 22, which is grace. This hexagram is very much about adornment. It's how we appear on the surface. It's not very deep. It's perhaps about what we look like, our mannerisms, our dress, and we're just trying to fit in, and that's how we're trying to get through life. And there is a moving line here. The bottom line moves. And with the bottom line moving, the advice here is to be humble. The image, it gives the image of someone who is riding in a carriage but chooses to get out of the carriage and go by foot. The bottom line moves. The bottom line is about, what is the bottom part of a body? It's the feet. So the bottom line moves, and we should not have airs and graces. We should accept our lowly social position. Now, that's I Ching language, which is all about hierarchies and society. It's perhaps about a matter that we're involved with that we don't understand, that perhaps we're not really connected with the people that matter. And so we need humility. We need to accept perhaps that we're an outsider. We need to perhaps also accept that we're not being taken too seriously. We shouldn't complain about that. We should just accept the situation. And in that way, we will be taken seriously. We'll be, if we're concerned that we're not being taken seriously, then, and we want to be taken seriously, then being as humble as possible, not boasting, not having any airs and graces, not thinking ahead. That's the way forward. Now, this hexagram moves because the bottom line moves, and that moves to hexagram 52, which is keeping still. In the end, we don't have to say anything, we don't have to do anything, we can just be still. And that way, if we're still, if there's any worry, if there's any danger, it will just pass us by and we won't be noticed. And you might think we should be noticed, but no, it's okay not to be noticed. Just keep still, let things happen. There's no need to promote yourself, no need to think you're not, no need to worry that you're not getting enough attention. It's all fine. Just keep still, and that is the way to handle the weeks energies. From a financial point of view, with 22 and the hexagram 22 being about grace, the way we handle money, the way we talk about money, the way we give the impression about what we have and what we don't have, it's just so important to be modest. We don't have to boast. When in terms of what we, what we wear, maybe whatever accessories we have, how we travel, ideally we will give the impression that we don't have much money. That's how we should go about things. Even if that means dressing down. Yeah, just don't show off with money, because that is the best way to, I suppose, keep your money, and it's also the best way to be given good advice. And there is a hint, maybe, that there is a little bit of a risk somewhere along the line. There is someone who would perhaps like to divest us of our money. Okay, that might not be about outright theft, but it could be through deception, trying to get us to buy something. But of course, if we give the impression that we have no money, or that we have limited funds, then it is likely that we will be left alone. We will not be attracting people who might not have our best interests at heart. And I suppose if we the universe is going to look favourably to people that are not boasting about how much money they've got, and this is kind of supported by what this hexagram moves to, and it moves to hexagram number 52, which is keeping still. So keeping still, I suppose, from a financial perspective, means, I suppose, not spending money. Although it's possible there may be some financial danger lurking, but if we keep still, that danger may just pass us by. So I think that overall, in terms of money, don't boast about what you have, because in that way you will not attract the attention of people and organizations and forces that might be able to harm you financially. And yeah, in the end, keep still. Keep still does mean not spending money, and that's probably the way to go about things. From a business and career perspective, we have the first hexagram is 22, which is grace. If you are an employee, then it is really important to be humble. Even if you think you know, the answers, even if you think that in some way you are superior, you need to keep that to yourself. Remember the emphasis here with the moving line. The moving line is the bottom line, which is relating to the feet. That means getting out of our carriage, going by foot, not showing off our knowledge, not trying to put anyone down, and I suppose respecting authority, perhaps making even a special effort to respect authority. And this of course applies if you're applying for a job, for example. I understand if you're applying for a job, I suppose you have to sort of write a resume about all your wonderful achievements and talents. And I understand there's a certain form about applying for a job. But in terms of the way you conduct yourself, whether you're talking to important people over the phone or you're having an interview, it's just important to downplay things. It's not to show off beyond a certain point, and showing extreme deference to the person who's interviewing you. I think that is useful, and if you have your own business and you are touting for new business, for new contracts, with this grace, it's telling you that appearances are everything. Grace is about adornment. It's how you package things. Now, that doesn't mean to say that your adornment and your packaging should be ostentatious. Far from it. Just being down to earth, not giving the impression that you know better than the person you're trying to sell something to or sell your goods and services or whatever. Just humbly trying to understand what they want. Adornments will not be appreciated. Over the top adornments, trying to pretend you're something you're not. That's not the way to get business. It is, you do it through being humble, and you make your point, and remember the bottom line moves. So grace moves to keeping still, and I suppose keeping still in terms of work, career, business in general, means there comes a point, perhaps towards the end of the week, when really there's nothing more that has to be done. Don't feel that you have to do anything. It may actually be the case that if you actually do things, you could cause a lot of damage. You might have sorted everything out, and then you take one action too many, and that just causes a lot of damage, and is actually completely counterproductive. Now, there may be a danger, depends on your position, a danger of your position at work being undermined, or perhaps if you have your own business, a danger of losing a contract, or something like that. A danger is afoot, but how you respond to that danger is important. Very often when there is a danger, the temptation is to react to the danger. But of course, if you react to a danger, you are advertising your presence, you are advertising your vulnerabilities. And so in this case, it may be that just by keeping still, the danger passes without noticing you. And finally, I want to look at relationships. The hexagram 22, grace, is about relationships. It's about how you appear. You might feel that if you want to improve a relationship, then the way you dress really does matter. But with that bottom line moving, I'm not convinced. Although the bottom line does talk about the feet. So if there's any item of clothing that matters, if you want to give a good impression, it's your shoes. Aside from the shoes, I'm not sure if anything else does matter. But don't ask me about the minutiae of clothing. That is something to consider, isn't that? Wasn't there that scene in Silence of the Lambs when Hannibal Lecter was pointing out Clarice Starling's shoes? He could actually analyze everything from her shoes, the fact that she came from a poor background or something like that. I only saw that film once, but that scene sort of sticks in my mind. So maybe the shoes what matters, but maybe I'm just perhaps being a little flippant there. But in terms of how you appear, it's just important to be modest. If you want to impress someone, don't overdress. If you try too hard to be impressive through what you wear, through what you appear, through spending too much time on appearance, I think it could just be counterproductive. You may actually give the wrong impression. And in any relationship, I think that humility is going to matter. It's not about trying to be. It's really important trying not to be someone you are not, and that's what people want. People don't want fakes. And now of all times, people don't want fakes. And this hexagram 22 Grace, it does move to keeping still. Perhaps this hexagram is saying something about existing relationships. It's indicating that an existing relationship may be under a little bit of pressure. And in order to deal with that pressure, it's suggesting don't do anything. Just withdraw, keep still, don't say much. And then this tension, or this potential for tension, should pass by and things can go back to normal. I suppose if it's a new relationship, you make your presence felt. The other person knows who you are. And that's it. Perhaps the warning there is don't talk too much, don't do too much, don't suggest too much, just keeping still. Perhaps a bit of silence can go a long way in terms of improving or developing a particular relationship. And that's it. That's I Ching, and those are my forecasts for the week. I hope you found this video of some interest. With heliocentric astrology, I mean, don't worry about it too much, but I'm just emphasizing that I think it's just something that we need to know about. So if you enjoyed this video, like this video, then I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed and you enjoyed this video, yes, I would be grateful if you were to subscribe. If you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thanks very much for listening, and I will talk to you again very soon.